Samantha Davis had always prided herself on living a life that others might envy. At 35, she had worked her way up to become a marketing manager at a prestigious technology company in New Orleans. Her office, perched on the top floor of a glass and steel building, reflected her success. The view of the city's skyline, stretching toward the Mississippi River, was nothing short of breathtaking. Her colleagues admired her for her drive and intelligence, and she was known for making things happen with the slightest push. But behind the polished exterior of success, something was crumbling. Samantha's personal life was a series of compromises, unspoken truths, and hidden regrets. She had everything she could have ever wanted, except for one thing: true happiness. It had slipped through her fingers years ago, swallowed by ambition and a secret she couldn't ignore anymore. Noah, the graphic designer at her company, had become more than just a colleague. He was everything her marriage was not: exciting, daring, and dangerously charismatic. Noah was 40, older, experienced, and unpredictable in all the ways Samantha found thrilling. Their affair had started innocently enough, just late nights at the office, brainstorming sessions that turned into something much deeper. Soon, their moments together became more than just fleeting encounters. They became an escape. Samantha knew she was playing with fire, but in a strange way, it made her feel alive again. It was as if, for once, she could feel something beyond the weight of her responsibilities, beyond the expectations of her career. The nights she spent in Noah's arms were a temporary reprieve from the staleness of her marriage to Daniel, her husband of nearly 10 years. Daniel, a talented photographer with a steady and supportive presence, had always been there for her. He loved her in a way that was calm, unwavering. But love, she began to think, wasn't enough anymore. He was content with their life together, never asking for more than she was willing to give. He had supported her through long hours and late meetings, always understanding when she couldn't make it home on time. But Samantha couldn't help but feel like something was missing. A passion, a spark that Daniel just couldn't ignite. Her affair with Noah, though, provided that spark, but at a cost. It was a secret that weighed heavily on her, but one that she buried under the guise of late business trips and long office hours. Samantha never thought it would get this far, but it did, and now she was entangled in a situation she couldn't untangle. One evening, after a particularly stressful week of juggling her job and her hidden relationship, Samantha found herself on a plane to Austin for a business conference. As she settled into her seat, her phone buzzed with a message from Noah. "Thinking of you. Be safe." Her heart skipped a beat. She smiled, sending a quick reply before turning off her phone. The conference in Austin was meant to be a break from everything: work, Noah, Daniel, but the moment she arrived at her hotel, the reality of her life hit her like a cold wave. She was standing at a crossroads, unsure of which direction to take, yet unable to turn back. When she returned to New Orleans 4 days later, exhausted but eager to reunite with her husband, she never imagined what awaited her. As Samantha pulled up to their home, the lights inside were off. The silence felt unnatural, too quiet, too still. She walked inside, calling out for Daniel, but there was no answer. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now seemed vacant, hollow. She moved through the rooms, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness, until she reached the bedroom. It was there that she saw it: Daniel's suitcase packed neatly by the door. Her heart raced. Had he gone on a trip? But why had he left without telling her? Then she saw the letter on the pillow. It was a simple white envelope with her name scrawled on the front in Daniel's neat handwriting. Her hands shook as she opened it. "I know everything." The words on the page felt like a punch to her gut. Her mind raced. What did this mean? Had Daniel found out? Had he been watching, waiting for the right moment to confront her? But where was he now? Frantically, she searched the house, hoping for some sign of him, a clue that would explain everything. But the only thing left was the emptiness and the burning question that lingered in the air. Where had Daniel gone? The days that followed Daniel's sudden disappearance felt like a blur to Samantha. Her world, once so carefully structured, had unraveled in an instant. She spent the first few hours after reading the letter pacing the house, as if retracing her steps would somehow lead her back to him. She called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried his work contacts, his friends, even his parents, but no one knew where he had gone. Her mind kept circling back to the letter. "I know everything." The words were simple but heavy with meaning. What did he know? Had he discovered her affair with Noah? Was that why he left? Had he finally grown tired of the lies? The house felt colder now. The walls, once a comforting presence, now seemed to press in on her with the weight of her guilt. She couldn't focus at work, couldn't bring herself to respond to emails, and couldn't stop the constant replay of what she had done. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face, hurt, betrayed, silent. She spent the first few days in a haze of confusion and despair, replaying her conversations with Daniel, wondering if there had been any signs she missed. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she had truly been present in their marriage. She had been so consumed by her career and her affair that she never noticed the quiet moments of frustration or sadness Daniel might have been experiencing. Days turned into weeks, and Samantha's search for answers led her to a single conclusion. Daniel was gone and he didn't want to be found. She combed through their home, trying to find any clue that could explain his sudden departure. There was no note, no trace, no indication of where he might have gone. All she had was the letter, and it only deepened the mystery. Her life, which had once seemed so perfect, now felt like a house of cards, fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. With each passing day, the guilt gnawed at her more. The lies she had told Daniel, the secrets she had kept, were no longer just whispers in her mind. They had become the reality she had to face. Samantha knew she couldn't keep living like this, trapped in her own shame and the memory of what she had lost. She needed to find Daniel, to fix whatever had gone wrong, to make things right. But where could she even begin? He had disappeared without a trace, and she had no idea where to look next. After weeks of fruitless searching, Samantha made a decision. She hired a private investigator, someone who could dig deeper into Daniel's life, someone who could find out where he had gone and why he had left. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. Daniel had always been independent, a man who didn't rely on others. But Samantha had to know the truth. The detective she hired, Mark Sullivan, was methodical, professional, and direct. He asked Samantha questions she didn't want to answer, questions that forced her to confront the ugly truths she had tried to bury. He asked about their marriage, about Daniel's state of mind, and about any possible reasons for his sudden departure. Samantha reluctantly shared everything she could, including her secret affair with Noah. She didn't want to, but she realized that the only way to truly find Daniel was to stop hiding from the reality of her own mistakes. Mark assured her that he would look into it and keep her updated. He was confident he could find something, anything that would lead them to Daniel. But deep down, Samantha wasn't sure if she wanted to find him. What if he didn't want to be found? What if the man she had married was gone for good, and all she was left with was a painful reminder of her betrayal? The days stretched on, and as the weeks passed, a sense of dread began to take root in Samantha's chest. What if Daniel was gone, not just physically but emotionally? What if his disappearance was the end of everything they had built together? Then one evening Mark called her. His voice was steady, but there was a tone of something unspoken, something that made Samantha's heart race. "I found him," he said. "He's in Denver." Samantha's breath caught in her throat. Denver? Why there? Was he starting over? Had he truly moved on from her, from everything they had shared? Mark continued, "He's working as a photographer for a well-known magazine. He's built a new life, and from what I've gathered, he's doing well. He seems happy." The words hit Samantha like a physical blow. Daniel had moved on. He had rebuilt his life, and not only that, he had found success, happiness, and peace without her. The man who had once supported her every dream, who had stood by her through thick and thin, had somehow found a way to be better, to be happier, without her in his life. Samantha felt the sharp sting of guilt and regret deep within her. She had lost him, but more than that, she had lost the chance to make things right. Daniel had moved on, and she was left with nothing but the echoes of what could have been. Samantha sat in her living room, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart heavy with the words Mark had just shared. Daniel had found a new life in Denver, and it stung in a way she hadn't expected. He was happy, living the life she had once envisioned for them both, only now she wasn't there. He had found his peace, and she was left to pick up the pieces of her own shattered reality. Her mind kept replaying the last few months. The late nights at the office, the secret meetings with Noah, the lies she had told. The guilt threatened to suffocate her. She had taken him for granted, believing Daniel would always be there, supporting her without question. But she had never truly seen him. She had been too wrapped up in her own desires, her own need for validation, to notice the man who had loved her with everything he had. "Can I speak to him?" Samantha finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. She wasn't sure what she expected, but she knew she needed to hear it from him. She needed to understand why he had left, what had led him to walk away without a word, without a single explanation. Mark hesitated, his voice laced with caution. "I don't think he'll want to talk, Samantha. From what I've gathered, he's moved on. He's built a new life there, and he doesn't want anything to do with the past." The truth hit her like a slap in the face. Daniel had closed the door on their marriage, and no amount of searching, no amount of guilt, could open it again. She had lost him, and it wasn't just because of the affair, it was because of the years of neglect, of taking him for granted. It wasn't just one mistake, it was a pattern of indifference that had pushed him away. But Samantha wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. She needed closure, something that would allow her to finally accept the reality she had been running from. She needed to see him, to hear him say it. She needed to know if there was any chance at all that he would ever look back. Against Mark's advice, Samantha made the decision to fly to Denver. She didn't know what she would say or how she would even begin the conversation, but she had to see him. She had to know if Daniel was truly happy, truly at peace without her. The flight to Denver felt endless, each mile between New Orleans and Denver adding weight to her already burdened heart. She couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, about what they had once shared, and about the life they had dreamed of building together. Had it all been a lie? Was he happier without her, or was he just surviving like she had been? When she arrived in Denver, she was disoriented by the change in scenery. The cold, dry air hit her the moment she stepped out of the airport, a stark contrast to the humid warmth of New Orleans. She called a cab, her thoughts racing as she gave the driver the address to the place Mark had found for her. It wasn't a luxurious neighborhood. Daniel had never been one for extravagance, but it was quiet, peaceful. As the cab turned down a narrow street lined with trees, Samantha's heart began to race. What if she wasn't ready for this? What if seeing him again only opened wounds that were better left closed? The cab stopped in front of a modest two-story house. The front yard was small but well kept, with a few plants Daniel had likely chosen himself. The house didn't look like a place for a fresh start. It looked like a place where someone could heal, where someone could rebuild. It felt like a sanctuary, something Daniel had fought for, something that no longer included her. Samantha paid the driver and stepped out of the cab, her hands trembling as she approached the front door. She stood on the porch for a moment, gathering the courage to ring the bell. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times, but now that she was here, words seemed to fail her. Finally, she reached out and pressed the doorbell. The door swung open and there he was. Daniel. He looked different, older maybe, but still the man she had married. His hair was slightly longer, his face a little more weathered, but there was no mistaking the man standing in front of her. He seemed surprised to see her, his expression unreadable. Samantha, he said softly, as if he hadn't expected to hear her name again. What are you doing here? The words felt like a punch to the gut. She had come all this way, and yet it seemed like he was already closing the door on her once more. There was no warmth in his voice, no trace of the man who had once loved her unconditionally. He looked at her with a guarded expression, his eyes cold, distant. I needed to see you, she said, her voice shaky. I needed to understand. Why did you leave? Why didn't you say anything? Daniel took a step back, allowing her to enter. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. You don't get it, do you? He asked quietly. I didn't leave because of one mistake. I left because of all of them. You took me for granted, Samantha. You thought I'd always be there, waiting for you to figure things out. But I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine. Samantha's heart broke all over again. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered, tears starting to well up in her eyes. I was just lost. I was chasing something, but I didn't see what I already had. Daniel didn't respond at first. He turned away, walking toward the living room, leaving Samantha standing there, unsure of what to say next. Sometimes we don't realize what we have until it's gone, he said, his voice low. And sometimes we have to let go in order to find peace. Samantha stood there, a lump in her throat, her world crashing down around her. She had lost him. And there was no turning back. Samantha stood frozen in the doorway, her breath shallow as she watched Daniel walk into the living room. The air between them felt thick with years of unspoken words, of memories she couldn't take back, and of mistakes she couldn't undo. She had come all this way, crossed thousands of miles, only to face the truth that Daniel was no longer the man she knew. She stepped inside, her footsteps tentative, as if each one was heavier than the last. She couldn't tear her eyes away from him, even though she knew the man standing before her was someone she had hurt beyond repair. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't get the chance to explain. Daniel finally turned to face her. His expression was hard, but there was a sadness in his eyes that she hadn't seen before, one that made her stomach tighten. What was there to explain, Samantha? You were already gone. The words stung more than she expected. She had never understood how distant they had grown until he said it aloud. Daniel had seen it long before she did. "I was gone," she repeated softly, the reality of it settling deep in her chest. She had been emotionally absent, lost in her own desires and regrets, while he quietly faded into the background of her life. She had taken him for granted, and now she was standing here, asking for something she didn't deserve. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "But I did. I know that. I've known it for a long time, but I didn't realize how much until now. Daniel, I've made so many mistakes. I've betrayed you and I regret it with every part of me." Daniel's eyes softened just a fraction, but he remained silent. He walked over to the window and looked out, as though seeking something beyond the world they once shared. Samantha could see the years of pain etched into his face, the quiet acceptance that he had let go long before she had ever realized what was slipping away. "You don't get it, do you?" Daniel finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't need your regret, Samantha. I don't need your apologies. What I needed was for you to be there for me. I needed you to see me, to care about me like I cared about you. But you didn't. You were too busy chasing things that didn't matter." Samantha felt the weight of his words settle heavily on her shoulders. It was true. She had been too absorbed in her own world, in her career and her affair, to notice what Daniel had been giving up for her. He had supported her, loved her, and stood by her side, even when she didn't deserve it. And in return she had taken him for granted, pushing him aside, believing he would always be there. "I'm sorry," she said, the words feeling like they weren't enough to undo the years of neglect, the lies, and the pain she had caused. "But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for closure, for us both." Daniel turned back toward her. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed a deeper truth. "I've already found my closure, Samantha. I had to let go of the idea of us to save myself. I had to stop pretending that everything would be okay." Samantha could feel the walls closing in on her. The distance between them had become insurmountable, and she knew, deep down, that there was no way to bridge it. He had moved on, found peace, while she remained trapped in a world of regret and self-blame. "Daniel," her voice broke and she stepped closer, her heart aching at the thought of walking away for good. "Are you happy? Truly happy?" He didn't answer right away, but the quiet in the room spoke volumes. "Yes," he finally said, his voice steady. "I'm at peace now. I found something I didn't even know I was searching for." Samantha's eyes filled with tears, but she wiped them away quickly, not wanting to show any more vulnerability. This wasn't about her anymore. She had no right to ask for anything from him, not after everything she had put him through. "I'm glad for you," she whispered, her heart heavy with the realization that this was the last time they would be together. "I'm glad you found peace." Daniel gave her a small nod, but it wasn't a gesture of hope or reconciliation. It was final. He had moved on, and Samantha needed to do the same. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, an unspoken understanding that things were truly over. There would be no more late-night talks, no more shared dreams, no more moments where they could pretend everything was okay. Their time had passed, and they were no longer the people who had once promised to spend forever together. "I'll go," Samantha said, her voice quiet but resolute. She turned to leave, but before she reached the door she paused. "I just want you to know. I loved you. I always have." Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The words hung in the air, unspoken but understood. They had both loved each other once, but love was no longer enough to save them. It was time to let go. With one last look at the man she had loved, Samantha stepped out of the door and into the cold Denver air. Her heart was broken, but somehow, there was a small flicker of relief in knowing that Daniel was truly free. Free from her, free from the past, and free to live a life that was his own. As she walked away, she realized that sometimes, the hardest thing isn't letting go of someone you love. It's accepting that they've already let go of you.